Hello and welcome back to It's Rock Science. Today I'm going to be talking about the geology of everyone's favorite underwater show, SpongeBob SquarePants. SpongeBob SquarePants was created by Stephen Hillenburg, and Hillenburg has a very interesting background. He was a marine science major in college as well as an art minor, and he worked as a marine biology instructor at the Orange County Marine Institute after college. SpongeBob SquarePants, the show, was created from Hillenburg's double interest in science and art. He even went on to graduate school at Cal Arts to study animation, and I guess the rest is pretty much history. And I think that because Hillenburg was a scientist himself, there's a pretty good amount of scientific references, specifically geologic references and ideas in the show. So let's get into it.
Here we see Bikini Bottom, teeming with life.
So Bikini Bottom is based off of and named after an atoll in the Marshall Islands, Bikini Atoll. The atoll and the islands that make up the atoll have a pretty complex history. In the 1940s and 1950s, the United States tested nuclear weapons here, and they displaced the people who once lived there to other atolls in the region. There's also a fan theory that all of the characters in the show are like mutated fish from the nuclear fallout from the bombs. That kind of makes sense to me. How else could you have a crab be the father of a sperm whale? It seems like a pretty valid theory in my opinion. Fun fact, the nuclear testing that the United States conducted in this region was a huge inspiration for director Ishiro Honda to make the original Godzilla movie. So Bikini Atoll is pretty prolific in pop culture. According to Stephen Hillenburg, Bikini Bottom is located at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, underneath Bikini Atoll. An atoll is a ring-shaped coral reef, island, or series of islets that surrounds a body of water called a lagoon. Atolls form when an underwater volcano rises and grows, breaching the surface of the ocean. A coral reef grows around the volcanic island. Over time, the volcano dies and becomes dormant or inactive. When this happens, it begins to sink or subside. However, the coral reef stays behind, forming an atoll. The Living Oceans Foundation has a really good video showing how atolls form. I have that linked in the description box below and also in the info card above, so I definitely recommend checking that out.
When is the next bus to Bikini Bottom?
In the episode titled Rock Bottom, SpongeBob and Patrick have just left Glove World and accidentally get on the wrong bus. They end up in Rock Bottom, a dark and linguistically different place from Bikini Bottom. Rock Bottom is a great example of the abyssal plain of the ocean. The abyssal plain is a vast, flat, and dark area of the deep ocean. It's located around 3,000 to 6,000 meters below the ocean's surface. Light can't really penetrate that deep into the ocean, so it's really dark. The sediments in the abyssal plain are usually fine pelagic sediments or ooze, or sediments deposited by turbidity currents. So when SpongeBob says,
"Even the soil looks different,"
he's pretty right. The soil or sediment in the abyssal plain is a lot different than what you would see in shallower marine environments like Bikini Bottom, where sediments are likely sandy and carbonate rich. One thing that's not explicitly geology related but that I found really cool about this episode is that the fish you see in Rock Bottom look just like the fish you would actually see in the abyssal plain. Things like the anglerfish, gulper eel, and cluck eel. It's something that directly hints at Hillenburg's marine science background and that I found really, really cool.
Wow, primitive.
In the episode titled SB-129, Squidward finds his way onto a time machine. Audiences are transported back into deep time, and we get a peek at the Paleozoic ocean. One marker or evidence of this are the trilobites littered throughout the episode. Trilobites are or were arthropods, like the insects, spiders, and crustaceans that we see today. The first trilobites appear in the early Cambrian, around 540 million years ago, marking the beginning of the Paleozoic era. Trilobites died off during the Permian-Triassic extinction event, around 251 million years ago. There are around 20,000 plus recognized species of trilobites, and they are pretty much the celebrities of the Cambrian. They're also one of my favorite fossils. Another Paleozoic marker we see in this episode are crinoids. Crinoids first appeared in the early Ordovician, and unlike trilobites, they still exist today. Crinoids are a type of echinoderm, and they are also sometimes called sea lilies because they have long stalks that attach to the seafloor bottom, making them look like flowers. When Squidward first steps out of the time machine into the Paleozoic ocean, a sort of sea eel kind of swims by. I was thinking that this is a Anomalocaris, But I'm still not really sure about that. I'm still researching and looking into it. So if you have any idea of what this organism might be, definitely comment that below.
Oh, my aching tentacles.
So Squidward is an iconic character in the show. I personally relate to his grumpiness, and I think his house that he lives in is pretty much like a personal extension of him, like a physical manifestation of Squidward, and it also tells a geologic story. So Squidward's house is modeled after the classical Easter Island head statues called moai. Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, is a volcanic island composed mainly of 3 extinct volcanoes. Terravaka, which forms the bulk of the island, and 2 other ones that I don't want to butcher the names of. Moai are made from basaltic rock, which are locally sourced from the island. Basalt is a dark-colored, fine-grained, extrusive igneous rock. Basically, it's a dark volcanic rock that forms and cools on the outside of volcanoes. Basalt's dark color comes from the dark mafic minerals in the rock, like pyroxene, amphibole, biotite, and mica. Basalt is also often produced at underwater rift zones and volcanoes, which is also probably where Squidward sourced the materials to build his own house.
Goo Lagoon. A stinky mud puddle to you and me.
So how do you get a lake in the ocean? While it seems impossible, it's actually a pretty common phenomenon. Goo Lagoon is a great example of a subaqueous brine pool, also called seafloor lakes. A brine pool is basically a large area of brine, water with high saltwater content, concentrated on the ocean floor. These pools have a saltwater content 3 to 8 times higher than the surrounding ocean, making them denser and heavier than the surrounding water. One thing I find really cool about brine pools is that they behave similar to terrestrial lakes you see on the Earth's surface. For instance, the movement of seawater causes ripples on the surface of brine pools, just like wind causes ripples on the surface of terrestrial lakes. Also, the brine in these seafloor lakes is so dense and heavy that fish and other marine mammals can float on its surface, just like people can float on the surface of the Dead Sea. When researchers sent a submarine to investigate a brine pool in the Gulf of Mexico, they found that their submarine could actually float on its surface. Brine pools are also referred to as hot tubs of despair because the saltwater content in these seafloor lakes is so high that marine mammals can't survive, and they die, leaving behind a hot tub cemetery, if you will. Nautilus Live also recorded some really awesome footage of a brine pool in the Gulf of Mexico. I definitely recommend checking that out. I have the link in the description box below, and you can also click on it in the atmosphere above. So this was the geology of SpongeBob. There's probably a lot more that I didn't see or didn't reference in this video. If you have any ideas or things you've seen while watching SpongeBob that are geology related or even just science related, comment that below. I definitely want to hear and read more. If you like this video and want to see more earth science content on this channel, definitely like and subscribe to my channel. Look forward to more videos in the future. Thanks for watching.
That's just a stupid boulder.
It's not just a boulder.